Okay, good morning everybody. Daf Mem Zayin, Amud Bet, by the new parak of Bamet Tomnin, that's 47b, starting the new chapter here. Bamet Tomnin, this shiur should be the Refuat Shlema Rachel Bat Chana, and Lahavdil Le'elu Nishmat Eliyahu Chaim Ben Allah. Also the Refuat Shlema Lahavdil for Shmuel Ben Chana. And Chaim ben Sarah and Shimon Yochanan ben Rachel, amongst all those who need a refuah. Okay, we begin this new parak called Bamet Tomnin. With what are you allowed to insulate? Hatmana is to insulate. Now, what's the problem of insulating? So there are two issues of insulating. We touched on it before in the Gemarot. Insulating means that you insulate, you surround a hot item in order to conserve its heat. So there's a problem doing that Erev Shabbat, and there's a problem on Shabbat. But there's a great difference. On Erev Shabbat, the Isur to insulate is specifically with things that add heat. There are certain ingredients that bring more heat to an item. Because of their chemical makeup, they will increase the heat. On Shabbat, you may not insulate even with things that do not increase heat. They just retain the heat that exists already, even if they don't increase heat. Now, what is the reason for these isurim? So we'll start with Shabbat. Shabbat, the issue is that a person may come, if he insulates things on Shabbat, he'll be busy with his pot of food, with his dish on Shabbat. He'll be walking over to the stove, to the thing. Oh, once he gets busy with that, we're worried that he's going to say, oh wow, it got so cold. And then he's going to come to raise the temperature, just like the same Isur that we had before with Shihiyah, when there's an Isser of Shehiyah. Okay? That is the Isser of Shabbat. And since that's the Isser of Shabbat, if it doesn't really matter what you're coming to insulate with. They just want you, don't insulate. Because once you come to insulate, you'll come to be mechata b'gecholim. So it doesn't really matter with what? With things that are mosif hevel, that increase heat, or things that are not mosif hevel. It doesn't really matter. The worry is basically the same worry that we had in the last parak, that you may come to move the coals and to speed up the cooking process, which is the isser, the prohibition of cooking. Now, it would therefore seem that whenever there wasn't an issue in the last parak, in the last chapter of Shema Yechate, of coming to, that you're going to come to mix around the coals, when there were many times where there was no problem. For example, if something is totally raw, you remember? So he's going to forget about it. Or something is cooked totally. We had a machloket. Does it have to be, if it's mitzamek v'riyofalo, it's still a problem. Machloket amarayim. Some say it has to be mitzamek v'raleh. But whenever your position in the Gemara, or in whenever that person's position is that it's okay to what? To do shihiyah, to leave something on a fire before Shabbat. So therefore, you would think that the same applies to the Isser of Hatmana on Shabbat. Because what's the whole problem of me coming to insulate on Shabbat? It doesn't really matter with what I insulate. The problem is that I might come to stoke the fire. Okay, whenever you weren't worried about me stoking the fire in the last parak, you shouldn't be worried about me stoking the fire in this parak, when I do Hatmana. And therefore, if I want to insulate something that's, for example, raw, or something that's so cooked that's mitztamik v'raloi, that if I cook it more, it's v'raloi, so then you shouldn't worry about me doing hatmana either, because I'm not going to come to stoke the fire. Some Rishonim learn that way. And whenever I had that allowance in the last parak, I apply it to this parak. Many Rishonim do not, however. And they say, the Isser of hatmana on Shabbat, we said, whether it's, even if it doesn't increase heat, even though it's for the same reason as last parak, has a different set of laws, and it's always a problem. Which means it's just a problem. Now, that needs an explanation. Why? Why would I come to stoke the coals? You told me last parak that if something is totally raw, I won't. Okay? And the way the Rishonim explain the difference is as follows. That usually hatmana is, shihiyah, which is last parak. What is shihiyah for? Why is it sitting on the fire? Because it's not ready for tonight. Most things that you do shihiyah with are for tomorrow. Okay? Actually, most things that you do, what did I just say? Maybe I just said it backwards. Sorry. Most things that you do shihiyah with are things that you're putting on like a soup for tonight. I was thinking hatmana. Are for tonight. And therefore, as long as for tonight it's not going to be ready, or it's already totally ready, I don't have to worry. But hatmana, when you come to do that, that's the big difference. We should even say between hatmana and shihiyah. Hatmana is usually for tomorrow. Tomorrow is in many, many hours. So then, even moving the fire a little bit and increasing the heat a drop might actually aid in the cooking process. Meaning, if something's supposed to be ready for tonight, and it's totally raw, what are you going to do? Move around the coals now? It's not going to help you. So you mesir dat from it. You forget about this. I'm not going to stoke the fire. So you can do shihiyah. I'm not going back to my pot. Okay? I'm not interested in the coals. If something is so cooked that it's mitztamik v'raloi, let's just say that, just to be safe on the side. Mitztamik v'raloi, it's going to shrivel and get worse for it. That's what mitztamik v'raloi means. So then I forget about it. Because it's already done for tonight. Why should I have to come? But if I'm going to insulate, usually insulating is for the purpose of tomorrow. To keep its heat for tomorrow. Oh, so for tomorrow you might get involved a little bit. And therefore, even if it's totally raw, the item that I want to insulate, or it's totally, thank you. Getting bitten up. Or it's totally we're being hosted here by the great Rabbi Amnon. I never mentioned that. We should really mention that to the whole world here. Mamish, a beautiful host and a beautiful Beit Midrash over here. Thanks so much. And he has everything for us. Everything we need. He even provides beautiful air conditioning here. It's perfect weather. Today and yesterday, Mom was beautiful. Okay. So now it's a very nice introduction for Shabbat. Now what's Erev Shabbat? Erev Shabbat, you're also not allowed to be matmin, you're not allowed to insulate, but there it's only with things that increase heat. Now, what is the reason for that? The reason for Erev Shabbat Hatmana being a problem, it's Erev Shabbat, it's not Shabbat. Why can't I do what I want? I can cook on Erev Shabbat, so why can't I insulate on Erev Shabbat? It's a very interesting halacha. People have to know this halacha. You're not allowed to insulate on Erev Shabbat. What? I'm allowed to drive to the store, make fires, cook, do whatever I want on Erev Shabbat. Yesterday we learned about an Isra on Erev Shabbat. At the end of the parak, right? We learned the Isra of putting water into the cup that's going to catch the sparks. It's people, because we said it's very interesting there, because we said there it's an Isra D'Rabbanan that nobody would understand would be an Isra even on Shabbos. So they already told you can't do it before Shabbat. So you don't come to do it on Shabbat. But that was like a very interesting thing. Here we find another time. Maybe that's the Smichas HaPrakim. I just thought of that now. I don't know. One Mishnah to the next. It's another Easter of even Erev Shabbat. Now, what's the reason? Why can't I insulate Erev Shabbat? The answer is, you could insulate Erev Shabbat if it doesn't increase the heat. But if it increases the heat, then we're worried that what you're going to do is you're going to use a specific item that increases the heat. And that is a bunch of coals. You're going to insulate it in like ashes of coals, hot coals, like crunched up, remet shel gechalim. And if you do that, then we're worried that on Shabbat itself, you're going to come to stoke the coals. So therefore, we're telling you like this. Don't use, let's say, we'll see in a second in the Mishnah, I'm going to give an example now. Don't use gefet shel zaitim, the old sediments of the olives that were pressed in the olive press. They actually, if you insulate, they actually increase heat. Don't do that on Erev Shabbat. You know why? Because if you do that on Erev Shabbat, you may come to also use remet shel gechalim. Because I'm allowed, what do you mean? It's Erev Shabbat. The rabbis have no issue. I'm allowed to do what I want, right? I'm allowed to use all sorts of increasing heat methods on Erev Shabbat. Okay. I'm not going to do anything on Shabbat. I'll just let it do its own thing on Shabbat, right? That's not a problem. So then you might also use remet shel gechalim. If you use remet shel gechalim, then we're worried that you're going to come to stoke them on Shabbat.
The remet shel gechalim just retain the heat. But if you stoke them, they can increase.
No. Remet shel gechalim are also something that is similar to the gefet shel eitzim.
Also increasing.
Yeah, because they're adding heat. They're boiling hot. Meaning, they're in the same category as gefet shel zaitim. If I do gefet shel zaitim, I'll say remet shel gechalim is gefet shel. They're all devarim hamosif hevel, and there's a problem, because if you do that, then you might come to lachtot begechalim b'Shabbat. Okay. Now, this is where we spoke about before. This isser of doing it on Erev Shabbat. So you might think that it's only a problem on things that are like in the middle of being cooked. That's what I'm telling you, that for many Rishonim hold that this isser of Erev Shabbat, that you might come to stoke the coals, is even asur to do it in gefet shel zaitim, because you might come do it in gechalim, in coals, is asur even if it's totally raw, or even if it's totally cooked. Because since usually the hatmana is to keep it insulated all the way for tomorrow, therefore any little aiding might actually aid it and assist in its cooking, and therefore we're worried that people will come to be mechateh begechalim. Okay, so let's start the parak. Okay, now the parak starts with Erev Shabbat. So the Erev Shabbat Isur, the prohibition on Erev Shabbat, is an Isur of Dover Hamosif Hevel. Okay? So the Mishnah starts, Bameh Tomnin Uvameh Ein Tomnin. Someone wants to take his pot off the fire on Shabbat. Is it tzaddik, this guy? No more fire on Shabbat, no more shehiyah. I don't want to do shehiyah. I just finished Perakira. Not playing with that. So, Daddy, how are we going to have hot food for tomorrow? Don't worry about it. We're going to insulate it. It's going to stay hot. Says the Mishnah, what are you allowed to insulate it with, and what may you not insulate it with? Says the Mishnah, Ein tomnin lo begefet. Don't use gefet. It increases the heat. And therefore, we have a problem with that, as will be as explained already, and we'll explain again soon. The lob is devil. And now with the waste of animals. Okay? Many times, the way they would do this, by the way, the way they would insulate in these things, was they would put it into a box. But in the box, they would line the box with these ingredients. And that way, you were insulated. Okay? So you have, okay, your pot is insulated now. V'lo b'melach, now with salt. Salt increases heat. So does waste of animals. V'lo b'sid, not with plaster. V'lo b'chol, not with sand. Bein lachin, bein yeveshin. Even if they're dry. Forget about if they're wet. Even if they're dry, they still have the properties to increase some heat. to add heat into the item, okay? They don't just conserve and retain the existing heat, they add their own heat. Oh, they add their own heat. So once they're adding their own heat and the Chachamim are allowing me, if they would, that's why they didn't allow it, because if had they allowed it, I would just do it with coals. Once I'm doing it with coals, then I may come to stoke the fire on Shabbat. So the whole thing, all this, was this is a protection, right? It's like a yellow line. That's what Isur D'Rabbanan is, like caution, yellow tape around this area. Don't get near the Isur of stoking. How so? Don't use anything similar to Gechalim, in the same category, which is Davar HaMoisif Hevel, a thing that adds Hevel. Okay? So, V'lo b'tevin, v'lo b'zogin, v'lo b'moichin, and not with straw, and not with zagin, are like the skins and the seeds, the sediments of the grapes after they're crushed. V'lo b'mochin, and not with soft little pieces of cotton or of old worn out clothing. Soft little pieces. V'lo b'asavin, bizman she'en lachin. Now all the last category of teven, zagin, mochin, these three is bizman she'en lachin, when they are wet. When they're wet, they add. Avotomim behen kshen yeveshin. But they fall into the category of things that don't increase heat when they're dry. So that's interesting because you have the same ingredient falls into a different category depending on if it's wet or dry. The first category didn't matter when it was what? Plaster, salt, sand, sediments of the olives. All those things, even when they're dry, they fall into the category of davar hamoisiv hevel. Okay? They increase heat, and therefore you're not allowed to insulate a pot on Erev Shabbat. It's an unbelievable halakha, rabotai. Erev Shabbat, can't use that. However, the next category, teven, straw, sediments of grapes, or mochin, soft little pieces of cotton, or of worn out clothing made from cotton, those are okay if they're dry, because they don't increase heat, they only retain the heat. Retaining heat is not an issue, because retaining heat is not comparable to remetz shel gichalim. If I hear that the rabbis allowed me to use something that just retains heat and doesn't increase heat, I'm not going to compare that and say, oh, well, then I can use coals as well. Coals add heat. And therefore, we're not worried that he's going to come to use coals and thereby end up stoking the fire. Good? Iboyeluhu. Now, it's kedai, it's worth saying over to yourself the halacha that we just said. Just say it to yourself one time to get it into your brain. Because when you hear a shi'ur and you're not saying things, they tend to fall out much quicker. Say to yourself, Erev Shabbat, a davar hamoisiv hevel is asur, and a davar that's not moisiv hevel is mutar. That's the halacha. So now, and on Shabbat it doesn't matter. Both of them are asur. Iboyeluhu, the Gemara asked the Shaila, Gefet shel zaitim tinan avod shumshim in shape dami. When it said gefet, which means the old sediments that were already pressed from the olives, it doesn't mean the olive ones, but the sesame seeds that were pressed for their oil, they don't add that much heat. They don't add so much heat like the gefet shel zaitim. So if the Mishnah was speaking about specifically gefet of zaitim, so that means it was not speaking about the gefet shel shumshimin. And the fact that they add a little heat, they don't make the cut. They're not going to be in the davarim shel moisiv hevel because the increased heat is too minimal to categorize them in this category of davar moisiv hevel. Or dilma the shumshimin tam v'choshken zaitim. Or maybe the gefet, the pressed item in our Mishnah was actually talking about crushed sesame seeds. And therefore, even there make it to the category of increased heat, which is asur, and it doesn't have to mention the gefet of zaitim, kolshkin. So basically, the Gemara's question is, does gefet of shumshimin make the cut or not? What does the Mishnah mean? The Gemara brings a proof. Tashemad Amar Rabbi Zeira Mishum Chad Debei Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Zeira brought a proof from one of the Chachamim in the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Yanai that said, "Kupa shetaman ba asur lanichal gefet shel zeitim." A basket that you have insulated a pot inside that basket or that box, like I told you before. You have a question? You have a basket or a box, and they placed a pot inside of it. And the norm, by the way, was to use muchin yiveshim, dried out cotton, inside the box, which is fine on Erev Shabbat, because it's a davish einoi mosif hevel, because it's dry. Okay, and that's where they put the pot inside the basket or the box that was lined with muchin yiveshin, which is not an issue. And he says, also lanichal al gefet shel zeitim. You're now going to place it on top, I stress that, on top of gefet of zeitim. Now, even though I did a beautiful hatmana, because I used the davar she'eino mostif hevel, that doesn't increase any heat, but now this chacham in the Beit Midrash Rabbi Yanai said, still now allowed to place that whole thing on top of gefet of zeitim, because now from underneath it's going to add hevel, and that's the isser. Okay, so it's, even though you're not being matman, you're not insulating it entirely and surrounding it, but that's similar enough to the isser of hatmana b'davar hamosif hevel.
All the hatmana we're talking about when it's actually sitting on the tanur, right? On the actual. No. Oh, this is off.
No, yeah. Look at the first verse. That's what I mentioned before in the Rashi. Remember, I told you the guy says to his father, "I'm a tzaddik. I'm removing it from the fire. No more shehiyah, no chazara, none of the last parak. You're a tzaddik. But now I want to. How's it going to stay hot, Dad? We're going to insulate it. Okay." There is a shaila, by the way, in the Rishonim, the Achronim. What happens if I do shehiyah in the most kosher fashion? Because I'm going like chananya, or it's totally raw. Let's get a simple case. A piece of raw meat that it's not going to be ready till tomorrow. But everybody agreed you're allowed to use that, you're allowed to do that for shehiyah. So it's sitting on the fire. No garuf, no katum, no blech. Shehiyah. Or I'll tell you even better. Maybe even this question could be even when you do shehiyah, that's okay because you did garuf v'katum. It was something that could it's in the middle of being cooked. It's not raw, whatever. But you did garuf v'katum, or something that's raw, so you didn't do garuf v'katum. But the point is, you're on top of a boiling hot area that's adding fire. Okay, but everything's kosher, right? Now I want to be matm in that. I want to do hatmana, I want to insulate it in something that's not moistif hevel. So that you're allowed to do on Erev Shabbat. Erev Shabbat. I take something that's muchin yiveshin, towels that are dry. Soft towels, some cotton towels. Just surround my pot. And I'll be careful the towels won't get burnt on the bottom. I'll keep them, but I'll surround my pot on top. And the bottom is on a. So that's a shaila in the Rishonim. I don't want to get everybody mixed up over here. That's a big shaila in the poskim, because even though I'm doing it a davar she'eino mosif hevel, and my shehiyah is also kosher, because it's a raw piece of meat, or because but now maybe that atmana will become mosif hevel, since I'm also using the bottom heat. That gets in the Rishonim, they get into that shaila, and I think it's going to be a problem, l'maisa. Yeah, which means I think it's a problem in the, maybe not for this I have to look it up, but by us for sure in the Ashkenazim, if we leave the pot of soup on the blech, we don't leave it, meaning you have to turn off the fire. if you want to put towels around it. Okay? I don't want to get into this because it's getting, it might mix people up. So if you got mixed up already, I'm sorry. And if you're starting to get mixed up, so just scratch what I just said. Don't scratch it, just put it in the back of your mind. Okay. So now, we're going back here. So the Gemara asked the Kasha. The Gemara, brought a proof from one of the Chacham in the Beis Medresh of Rabbi Yanai, that he said that you're not allowed to place it on top of a gefet shel zaitim. You did a kosher hatmana, because it was in a dry muchin, it was Erev Shabbat, and now you can't put it on top of zaitim, because that's going to increase the hevel. So, now why did he say gefet shel zaitim? Why didn't he just say gefet shel shum shemin? So that means that Chacham in the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Yanai, he understood the Mishnah that a dover ha-moisef hevel has to be how much moisef hevel? Zaitim. Shum shemin doesn't make the cut. Shema mina shel zaitim tenan. So the Gemara says, no. Really, in regards to insulation, I'll tell you, even shum shemin is what the Mishnah was speaking about. So why did that Amorah say that gefet shel zaitim? But le'inyan asuki havlo, the zeisim maski havlo, the shum shim lo maski havlo. Okay. Here, his story wasn't really insulation. It was something that's going to be like insulation. It's going to be as usher as insulation. You didn't really insulate it. You just had it on the bottom, something bringing up its heat. That you need to have zaitim. Shum shimin won't be compared to real insulation there. This is like a new halacha. This is like a quasi insulation. So for quasi insulation, it's got to be really dover hamoisif, a lot of hevel, not shum shemin. But if you really want to do real insulation, then the Mishnah is talking about, which is what the Mishnah is speaking about, hatmana bamet tomnin uvamet ein tomnin. There, even shum shemin makes the cut. Okay, fine. Anybody could call me up if you have any questions and you're not understanding. 732-691-3395. 732-691-3395. Yeah, you can just call me Stam to say hello. I hope to get your numbers today and bother some of you that are not coming on. If you're not on, so you don't hear me anyway, so I'll just continue. Rabbi Zera iklu leberesh galuta. Rabbi and Reb Zera visited the home of the head of the diaspora. We had this many times, right? The head of the diaspora. We had it in Brachot many times, right? So now Rabbi and Reb Zera are there. They saw this slave that placed a kuza de maya, a pitcher of water, apuma de kumkima, on the mouth of a kumkum of hot water. Okay? He didn't. Now, the simple way of learning this Gemara with Rashi is he did not want to cook this at all. He just wanted to warm up the water. It was freezing. So, the Nazir Rabbah, and Rabbah screamed at him, meaning Asur, Shabbat. Okay? Shabbat. You can't do such a thing on Shabbat. Playing with fire. Fire. You have to understand, the Amoraim, they screamed when it came to Shabbat. People get offended by that. Why doesn't the rabbi say it nicely? No. How about if you're serving, if there was you see someone serving a baby in the high chair, a little Gerbers, and you happen to know that in that Gerber, there's a lot of shards of glass because it cracked. The person feeding the baby doesn't know. There's tons of little shards of glass all over. And it's very dangerous for the baby to swallow glass. The baby's only 6 months old. He just started eating his first Gerbers. And whatever he swallows is very dangerous in his intestines. And he could also get cuts all over his mouth. Terrible. The poison inside, whatever. For 6-month-old baby. It's deadly. Chas v'shalom. So how would you tell him not to feed him? So you say, stop. come on, relax, all right? I don't know what you're getting so excited. It's just a little Gerber food. So you would say, stop! You're not doing that. You would grab him. You get very upset because you're saving his life. And that's what Shabbat is, Rabbotai. Shabbat is nothing less than that, but it's even more than that. You're saving your neshama. You're saving your neshama just because you don't end up in a hospital with doctors all around you. You need a hospital for your neshama. And it's deadly. The Nazir Rabba, so Rabba screamed at him, Amalei Rabbi Zera, Maishtami mecham al gabi mecham. So Rabbi Zera told him back, why is it different than placing a hot water urn or whatever, kettle, on top of another hot one in order to preserve and conserve its heat? And later on, we're going to learn about it in this parak that it's going to be mutar in a braita. So why is that different? Amalei hatam ukmi kamukim. They're both hot. And the bottom one is just retaining, preserving the existing heat. So there's no isur. Here, however, since the top one is cold and the bottom one is adding heat, so it's comparable to hatmana with a davar hamosif hevel. Okay? Now, this is like, so this is already included in the isur of davar hamosif hevel. Now, it wasn't so much included that they prohibited this on Erev Shabbat. But on Shabbat, they already said you can't do this. Okay? So here we have something, this is comparable to the last story that we just had. You have a gefet shel zaitim that's adding heat. So you can't put something on top of it on Shabbat either, only on Shabbat. Okay? I think that case also was Abzera. Yeah. Okay. The last case I think was even on Erev Shabbat. That's the only difference. The last case in the story was Erev Shabbat. In this case it's different. This is only on Shabbat. Okay. So the Gemara had the Chazi the Paras Tisto the Rapume de Kuba. The Gemara continues. That same slave, he placed. This is nothing to do with our perek, but it's just a continuation of the story. Another story that the Eved did something wrong. He placed like a handkerchief over a barrel of water or of wine, and then he placed a bowl on top of the handkerchief to keep the handkerchief in place. Okay? And what's wrong with that? Just wants to cover over this barrel of wine or water. He wants to keep the handkerchief in place. So he puts like a bowl on top of the handkerchief. The Nazir Rabba screamed at him, Shabbat, can't do that. Amalei Rabbi Zera, Amai. So Rabbi Zera asked Rabbi, what's the issue now? Amalei hashta chazit. Now you'll see. L'stov chazit dekome atzalei. At the end, Rabbi Zera saw the slave going to squeeze out all of the humidity and all of the, well, I don't know if it's just humidity, he might have dipped in a little bit and it got wet. Now he wanted to go squeeze out the water out of the handkerchief, which is an Isser on Shabbos of Schita. Okay? The Sfat Emet says he didn't actually see him do it. I mean, Rabbah wouldn't say, oh, just watch, sit back and watch the Isser of Shabbat. He's not going to allow him to do it. It means he was going to do it. Watch, you'll see what he wants to go do. So he saw him, probably what happened was, he saw him going to take the handkerchief, and he says, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to get, it's wet. Stop. And then he stopped him. But he wanted to show him this is what was going to happen. So, okay, I see, very nice. So you don't want to allow him to place the handkerchief. You screamed at him that he wasn't even allowed to place the handkerchief down because he's going to come to. But we know that there's a case of prunka. What's prunka? Perunka is all the way later on in Shabbat, that it's allowed, you're allowed to spread a beged on top of a barrel, take a towel or a talit and spread it over a barrel. It says you're allowed to. Why aren't you worried over there? Okay? There, he's not makpid, he's not particular about the towel. Do you know why? Because the towel is made to be the covering. Okay? Since the towel is made for that, when it gets wet, he's not going to squeeze it out to try to get it out. That's what it's made for. But here, he improvised. He's like, oh, I have a little barrel of water or wine here. I don't want bugs to get in. I don't want it to get dirty. Oh, I have a little handkerchief here. Let me put it here. But then he's going to be very particular about his handkerchief. Every time it gets a little wet, dirty, he's going to go and squeeze it out. That's why it's different in that case. Okay. We return now to our Mishnah. But guess what? We return to the halachot of muktzeh. How so? Because our Mishnah said you're not allowed to use teven or zogin or muchin when they're wet. Right? So that looks like this. What do you use muchin for? Muchin are like soft pieces of cotton. Normally what they're used for is something that makes them muktzeh on Shabbat. They're used for material to make something out of them. Okay? And since they're used for that, they're muktzeh machmat, either because you're going to sell them or you're going to be careful to make something. It's like machmat chisaron kis. That muktzeh is when something is not going to be used for Shabbat, because what you do with it on Shabbat is something asur, like making begadim, and it's even worse because that would just make it a kli shemalach to l'isser. Here, it's even worse because you don't even want to touch them; you want to sell them. So, for example, things that I sell in my store, even let's say a cup, a glass cup. In my home, glass cups are not muktzeh because they're good utensils. I can use them. But if I sell glass cups in my store, I don't touch them. I never touch them. I don't play. I don't use them to drink because they might break. I want to sell them. I want to make money off them. So I leave them alone always. And I only use them when I sell them and I show them to the customer. So therefore, they're off my mind. It's muktzeh machmas chisaron kis. That's chisaron kis, that I might lose money. Such an item is muktzeh. And therefore, these muchin should normally be muktzeh. Now, I took muchin and I used them in a permissible fashion, let's say dry ones, which I told you was, and I lined the box, and I did hatmana. Okay? So, Ba'amine Rav Ada bar Matna me Abaya. Rav Ada bar Matna asked Abaya, muchin shetoma bahem, ma'u l'taltalim b'Shabbat. These muchin, that I insulated them. Now that I insulated them, am I allowed to move them on Shabbat? Okay? Why not? Because did I create something out of them that is different than what their normal purpose is? Now I use them as insulators. So maybe I changed their functionality, and now their function is different, so now it's not muktzeh. Amalei, just because one time he didn't have straw, which is much cheaper and much more common to use for an insulator, and he was forced to use something that was more expensive and that usually you make things out of and you sell it, and he had to use muchin. So now he's going to be mafkir kupa shel muchin. He's just going to use it. He's not going to use it again. These expensive muchin. And he's going to always use them for hatmana? No way. Just because you use them once, he'll take them out after Shabbat and use them for their right purpose. And therefore they still should be muktzeh. That's what the Gemara is saying. The way Rashi says it's v'lo batli lehatmana, which means nobody nullified them to be designated to be used for hatmana from now on. This Shabbat, I had to use them. Be'ezrat Hashem, after the Shabbat, I'll go to the store, I'll get straw again, I'll go to the field, gather some straw, and I'll take this expensive muchin out, and I'll use it for whatever I wanted to use it for, which was to sell, to make begadim, which is totally muktzah. And therefore, Abaye is telling Rav Ada bar Matna, they are muktzah. You may not move this on Shabbat. You insulated with them, fine, no problem. But you can't move around. You can't move around this box. The Gemara says, let us posit that we have a support to Abaye's answer from the following Braita. Tomnin begizei tzemer. You're allowed to insulate on Erev Shabbat with strands, cuts of wool, with tzipei tzemer, and combed out wool. Okay, now they look like a little mat. Ubil shonot shel agaman, and tongues of dyed purple wool. All these are like pretty raw state, and they're going to be used to be spun into nice wool. Uvemuchin, and with soft cotton, the ein metaltalinotam. Even though you're allowed to use them for what? For hatmana, because they don't increase any hevel, so Erev Shabbat I can use them. But ein metaltalinotam, you can't move it on Shabbat. This box around. You could put your out, but don't move this box around. Why not? So you see here that even though you used it once for hatmana, you're not nullifying it for that usage. These are supposed to be spun into nice wool. And therefore they're strands that are muktzah, and they retain their muktzah status. So the Gemara says, mishum ha. If your whole support is from that braita, lo area, there's nothing to show. You're not showing any proof. Why? Hari kamar. Because the braita just means as follows. Im lo tamam behem ein metaltanotam. It doesn't mean after you use them for hatmanah, you can't move them because they're muktzah. No. If you use them for hatmanah, maybe you already nullified them from usages as real wool, and you made them into your hatmanah box. And now they change, their functionality changes, and it's not muktzah. But there's two separate halachot being said. First of all, you could use them for hatmanah because they're not mosif hevel. Second of all, if you didn't ever use them for hatmanah, you didn't nullify them to the box, then ein metatlam they're muktzah. Now, what would be the chiddush in that? Okay, of course it's muktzah. That's the Gemara's next kasha. So what's the chiddush? Just to tell you that if you never use them for hatmanah, they're muktzah. Of course they're muktzah. The answer is I would think that they are. It is possible, since people sat on the ground in those days, you could make something out of them. So maybe they're not muktzah. You could make them as a little seat or something to lean on the ground so you don't get dirty. It's a drop more comfortable. It's between you and the rocks and the pavement or whatever it is. So maybe it's not muktzah, and therefore the Mishnah says, no, they're muktzah. Because their primary function is for something that you don't use on Shabbat, and you're going to make something out of them, and you don't touch them on Shabbat. Your mind is off of them because they're expensive, and you want to sell them or make something nice out of them, and therefore they're muktzah. That's the chiddush. But the Mishnah, the Braita is not speaking about when you use them for hatmanah. It's very possible that when you use them for hatmanah, then you nullify them and they turn not muktzah. Okay? Rav Chizda shor la'aduri udu lebeisadi b'shabbata. Rav Chizda allowed, shara means to allow, shara, that's mutar. Le'ahadure, we know what hadure means, to be mahadeh, to return. Udra are these soft pieces of cotton. Le'beisadia, into a pillow on Shabbat. So it fell out of the pillow. He allowed you to return it into the pillow. Okay, now, didn't we just say that muchin are muktzah? The answer is not these. Because these were already made into pillow. These are pillow. These are not muchin that I'm going to make a nice beged out of, and it's raw material. These were used already. They are pillow. Pillow is a keli that's mutar on Shabbat. So all these muchin inside the pillow are not muktzah. So the issue is not muktzah anymore. But now it fell out. So now when I stuff it back into the pillow, am I not being over on the Isur de Oraita of Makeh Bepatish? So Rav Chisda says, no, you're not. It's not a problem. Okay? So Eitve Rav Chana bar Chisda, the Rav Chisda. Rav Chanan, the son of Rav Chisda. Now, is this the son of Rav Chisda? Some learn like that. He asked his own father. From the following Braita. Matirin beit hatzavar b'Shabbat, avolo potrin. Now, when you sent your clothing to be washed by the launderer, in those days they would return it with the neck area tied up. So the halacha is that we know that you're not allowed to tie and untie on Shabbat. We're going to learn about it later on. A kesher shel kayama, a knot that's permanent. So it says this one you're allowed to untie because the knot itself wasn't permanent. So therefore the untying is also allowed. Just like you're allowed to tie it, so you're allowed to undo it. Avolo potrin. But if you have a brand new beged, which doesn't have a hole for your neck to go through, you're not allowed to open up a new beged on the top to make a hole for your neck to go through. Why not? Because you're fashioning an opening. So you just now created your makeh bepatish. This wasn't a worthy shirt until you did this. Says the Braita, you're not allowed to place muchin, soft pieces of cotton, into a pillow or a blanket because you're being mitake in the keli. Biyom tov, ein tzarich lomar b'Shabbat, and for sure not on Shabbat. Okay? So the Gemara is saying, how could Rav Chisda say you're allowed to do this? Lo kasha ha b'chadati ha b'atiki. The Gemara says, the Braita is talking about brand new pillows. So now you're creating the pillow now by placing the pieces of cotton inside. You're stuffing it. Of course, that would be like making a keli and it would be astur. But Rav Chisda is talking about an old pillow. So therefore, when you return these items, since you don't need a professional to do it, so therefore we don't consider it like you're actually creating the keli. Why? Because the keli is still here. Here's my pillow. There's a few pieces that fell out. I'm not making a pillow because the pillow is still here. So if the pillow is here, I'm just adding to my pillow, making my pillow better. But it's not makeh bepatish, the final hammer blow, which creates, it's called the gemar malacha, which creates the keli. Okay? So the Gemara says, Tanya, we also learned in the Braita, you're not allowed to place muchin into a pillow or a blanket yom tov, but if they fell out, the Braita says, beferish, if they fell out, you can return them. The Gemara goes back into that halacha. If someone fashions an opening in a clothing, doesn't have an opening yet, okay? Many times, the way that they did it was that they actually made an opening, the guy that made the tailor, but then he restitched it. And what we're talking about is you rip out those stitches. That's the way they did it in those days. The Rishonim speak about if it's only in that case or because in the other case it's like pashut, that you're fashioning it. Maybe the chidush is even when there was already an opening, but he restitched it, you open it. But at the end of the day, you're chayav chatat. It's makeh bepatish.
I mean, it's like we buy a suit today and they sew the pockets closed. Right?
Exactly. Similar. But that might not be a chayav chatat. Because your pants are ready to be worn. If the pants hole where you put your leg inside would be stitched up, then you're creating the keli. But if here the pants are already done, so what are you creating? A pocket. So maybe because you're creating a pocket, but maybe not, because the main item here is already made. It's usable. Okay? The case here we're talking about is like something that you put your head through, and there's nowhere to put your head through. You have to make the hole. Matkifla Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana asked a very strong kasha on this. Okay? Now there's a whole deal in the Rishonim. I just want to tell you, the Rambam learns the problem is korea, is ripping, which is different from melacha, not makeh b'patish. And everybody speaks about why Rashi didn't learn there was an isser of korea. You're ripping in order to fashion something. Okay, so that, but let's just learn with makeh b'patish now. So the Gemara says, Matkif Rav Kahana, Ma beit zu lemegufat chavit. What's the difference between this and slicing off with a sword the megufat chavit, the covering of a barrel of wine? You have guests. Just giving an example. The Gemara speaks about that later. Daf Kuf Mem Vav. And the person wants wine, so he goes down to his cellar, and the barrel of wine is sealed with the covering. The top of the wine is sealed on. So what he does is he slices it off with his sword. Okay? Now, why is that okay? Now you're fashioning the opening. The keli wasn't worth anything, all that wine, until you open it. That's okay. The difference is as follows. The cloth, the clothing, was entirely one. It was one. It had no opening. When you open it, you're fashioning a brand new thing. That's tikkun keli. But the barrel of wine is not considered one. The cover is one thing, the barrel is another thing. Even though you sealed it with whatever they used to seal the cover, some very, very strong, like glue or whatever they use, pitch and stuff to glue it, it's made to be taken off. It's like you're one thing, the barrel's another. Right now we want you on top of it to protect it, to keep its freshness and preserve its, right? But one day you're coming off. You're made to come off, you're a separate thing. Therefore when I slice it off, it's not like I'm creating a petach, it's already considered like it had an opening. I'm just being megale. I'm revealing its opening. It's two separate items here, okay? That's the difference. Let's continue. This new thing called chibur and not chibur. When something is attached, it's one, and I rip it out and now I make it functional, that's makeh b'patish. When something was separate, even though you put them together, it's already like it was open. So the Gemara asked the kasha, Rabbi Yomi asked Rabbi Zera, a distinction between two mishnayot. There's a mishnah in Uktzin, it's the last masechet in Shas, the last masechet in Taharot. Shalal shel kovsin. The way the launderer would do it many times is he would use very thick stitches, like not fine stitches, to attach small little clothing with large clothing. Right? You always wonder, how do they know, how do they not mix up my batch in the cleaners? So they have some sort of system. And they had a system in those days too. What they did is they did these fast, these little pieces of clothing that you brought to the launderer. They didn't want to lose them. So they attached them with like a junky type of sewing, large stitches. You have a keychain with many keys. Where you have two pieces of wool that were sewn together with a little flax, which is pishton, which is the isser of shatnez. Okay? Now, all these cases, you're going to separate the items from each other. You're going to undo the stitching. Either because they're not meant to be together, or because there's an aveira to have them together as shatnez. Even so, chibur l'tuma, even though you're going to take them apart, if one of the begadim or one of the keys become tamei, everything is tamei until I begin to undo the attachment. Alma shelo b'shat melacha nami chibur. Okay, so we see that they're considered one. Even though I already finished doing what I needed to do, I already washed them. They're on the way home. I don't need these things together. But since they were made together, I put them together. And now I don't need them together. I actually want them separated now. Just like the barrel of wine. Okay? We see they're considered one. Viraminu, asked the Gemara, from a different Mishnah. Makel she'aso yad lekordom. You have a metal axe. And you try to make some temporary handle for this axe. So you place like this stick, this like wooden stick into the axe. Only while you're using the axe as an axe are they considered one, and if one becomes tamei, the other becomes tamei. But once I'm done using it, if one half becomes tamei, let's say the eights, the handle, the bottom part, the metal axe part, doesn't. If the axe becomes tamei, it doesn't. So here we see it's only b'shat melacha. But once I'm done the melacha, they're considered separate. So make up your mind. Something that you attached, and you have plans to detach it, and you're already done the reasoning for attaching it, is it considered one or not one for the halachot of tumah? This is seemingly the contradiction. So Amalei, so he told him, Hatam vir shelo b'shat melacha adam asul lizerkol ben haitzim. Okay? What is a person going to do with the axe after he's done? He's going to just take the handle, throw it amongst the trees, amongst the wood. Okay? He doesn't really need it anymore. So once they finish working with it, it's, even though it's still attached, we don't consider it attached anymore. But here, by the stitches of the laundry, even after they finished, he's also very pleased that they're together. Because I say to myself like this, if this happens to get dirty now, okay, if they get dirty, I can rewash them and they're already attached. So he's kind of pleased that they're still together. Okay? So therefore, that's the difference. The difference is whether the person is happy about the attachment or not. So now we see from here that once you attach things in regards to Tumah, they become one. And they retain and they remain as one until I have no interest at all in them being together. So the Gemara says, "Besura matnu lahoshmaita mishmei Rav Chizda." In Surah, the following teaching was said in the name of Rav Chizda. Bepumpedita, however, in Pumpedita matnu mishmei Rav Kahana. Ve'amela mishmei Rav. They would say it in the name of Rav Kahana, and others would say it in the name of Rav. And this is the topic. Who is the Tana that they said in the name of the Chachamim, Kol ha'mechuber lo hareu kamo? That if I have one item attached to another item, even though I don't need this item to be attached to the other item for the functionality of the other item. For example, like in the launderer, I don't need the little piece of clothing to be attached to the large piece of clothing for the large piece of clothing to work. Yet, if they are attached, for whatever reason, because I sent them to the launderer, they are one for Tumah. Who is the Tana that said that? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Reb Meir. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, it's Reb Meir. If you have a kira, we know what a kira is. It has two potholes on top, and there's fire underneath. You build it straight. It's made out of cheres. And they had all sorts of little different attachments to it. Just like you have on your barbecue, you have on the side, they have like this little thing for your pot, this little thing to put down your pan of hot dogs. So in those days also, they would have a keli there called a beit hapach, where they would put oil to warm up the oil. And they have a little different compartment made out of cheres called beit hatavlin, to warm up, to keep your spices. And they would put another little thing attached to it, which was called the Beit HaNer, where they would have a ner. Mitamin b'maga. Now, how would they attach it? They would put a little pitch or cement, and they would take this little piece and they would attach it to the large kira. Okay? So it wasn't originally initially made with these things, but they get attached to them subsequently. Mitamin b'maga ve'em mitamin ba'avir. So the halacha is that if the kira becomes tameh b'maga by actually being touched with tumah, then even the small kelim that are attached to it now become tameh, and vice versa as well. Okay? But if the kli cheres became tameh through its ear, and we learned about this before, that kli cheres, unlike other kelim, can become tameh from its ear space inside of it, right? Just by having the tameh item, the tameh, whatever the tameh thing is, the mate, the sherets that died, being placed inside becomes tameh. Then the kelim that are attached to it will not become tameh. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that then they won't become tameh. These additional things that got added subsequently after it was made, and they put this little compartment that they are considered separate than the kira in regards to the halachot of tumah that became tumah from the avir. What the difference is, we'll see soon. But if it became tameh from touching, then they're all going to be tameh. But Rabbi Shimon Mitayr, Rabbi Shimon says all these kelim are not considered attached to the kira at all. Doesn't matter for what type of tumah. Okay? They're separate. They're separate keli. They happen to be attached now with cement, but they're separate. Now, what do we see from Rabbi Meir? We see that you can have, according to Rabbi Meir, things, one item attached to another item, even though the small item's attachment to the larger item does not aid the large item's usage in any way. It doesn't aid it. Still, it's good, since they're attached now, they're considered one. At least for the halachas of Tumah b'maga. So that's the man Omer that holds that all these issues are a problem for Tumah, one for the other, because even though the small thing doesn't help the usage, but at the end of the day, I put them together for whatever reason I wanted to put them, so I shouldn't lose them, that's enough. So the Gemara says, Bishlam al Rabbi Shimon kasav alav kekir damu. The svara of Rabbi Shimon, the logic is very simple. Just because I attach these little things to my kira, they're not the kira. They're a separate thing. Well, this is a Beit HaNer, Beit HaTavlin, Beit HaPach. That's a kira. They're two separate things. Just because I can't separate them. They're two separate things. And one has nothing to do with the other. El Rabbi Meir, Ike kira dama filu ba'avir nami l'tamu. Ilav kira dama filu b'maga nami lo l'tamu. But according to Rabbi Meir, make up your mind. If they're like a kira, then let them be tamei, one to the other, even if it becomes tamei in the ear space, because it's a kira. This becomes the kira. You attached it. So you're going to say, no, it's not the kira. So if it's not the kira, then even if you tamei with maga, and the dead item actually touches the kira, right? The tumah source touches the kira, so it shouldn't matter. And it shouldn't make the Beit HaPach tamei. So the Gemara says, La'olam lav kekira dama, v'rabbanon hu degazebu. Says the Gemara, really it's not kekira, but the Rabbanan made a gzeira to make them be considered like the kira. Says the Gemara, igazebu afilu ba'avinami l'tamu. So the Gemara says, if they made this gzeira, so why didn't they make this gzeira that they should be considered part of the kira, even with tumat avir? So the Gemara says, "Avdubu rabbanon hekera ki hechdolei also lemisif alei truma v'kachim." We had this before in Shabbat. The Chachamim said, we want to show you that it's only midrabanan. How are we going to show you it's only midrabanan? By making it only part of the kira in regards to a stronger tumah of tumas maga, not tumas avir. So you'll realize that it's only midrabanan. Why do we want to make sure that you know it's only a tumah midrabanan? Because if it's tamei midirabanan, we don't want you to come and burn kachim or truma that touch this. And you say, oh, it's tamei. What's the halacha with truma and kachim that become tamei? You burn them. So let's burn them. You're not allowed to burn them. Because midoraita, they're not tamei. So how will you know that it's only a truma derabanan, and be careful not to burn the kachim or the truma, just not to eat it. Just leave it alone until it disintegrates. By telling you that we're not going to make such a broad takana here and make it like the kira in regards to everything, only in regards to tumas maga. Okay. Now, therefore, we have to go back to Shalal Shal Kofstim. This Shalal Kofstim is what? Wanderer, when he puts them together, the Gemara is saying it's really, according to Reb Meir agrees that Midoraita to Reb Shimon that it's really not considered one. And Midoraita, the Chibur, is not enough to make it one for Tumah, for one, right? But Midorabanan, the Chachamim considered it a Chibur. Okay? Bezat Hashem will continue tomorrow. The new Tenu Rabbanan.